Welcome to a Monday night episode of Taking It to the Nub. I wasn't able to do this Saturday because I was at the Barn Smoker, and that's the thing you do. There's a lot of festivals going on this week.
You had a terrible time.
You know, we had a great time. I had a great time. I mean, everybody that went there had a great time. But we're not here to talk about my sponsor, Drew Estate, till it's time for them. We're here to talk about Nick Syris, the owner of LH Premium Cigars, otherwise known as Lavida Habano. Now, Nick's got a long history in the cigar business, and we're going to learn about Nick and his craft. And I'm going to bring Nick in right now. Nick, how are you today?
Very good.
Thank you for joining.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to the cigar community. That's
Where
my
are
people.
you chiming in from tonight?
Tonight, I'm in my best favorite private club in New Jersey called the Metropolitan Cigar Society. It is actually the oldest private club still in existence, started in 1996. I was actually one of the original 13 guys when I originally lived in Jersey, then moved to Florida for 20 plus years. Unfortunately, I like to tell people I temporarily live in Jersey now, but I'm back at the lounge and love to smoke when I talk to the cigar folks. And, you know, I can't even smoke in my own house, and that's what pays the bills. But here we are.
You got to build a cigar lounge.
Yeah, I know. I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
So what are you smoking tonight?
Well, of course, I have to smoke my own stuff. I'm smoking the Nick Lonsdale. Okay. I have two lines of cigars in the LH, under the LH umbrella. There's the LH line of cigars, and then there's a line of cigars that is called the Nick. Started out with a cigar that I think you were saying you were going to smoke.
I have it right here.
And that's the Panzone.
The Panzone.
The Panzone, which means pot-bellied. And a funny thing there, I tell people, I was originally just going to call it the Nick. And the reason for that is I launched this during the pandemic, and trying to get bands wasn't happening at that time. So I make a cigar for a very good friend of mine that owns a little brand you may have heard of called The Leaf by Oscar. His name is Jim Robinson. So Island Jim Robinson. Island Jim Robinson.
I'm going to stop you there for just one moment. Island Jim Robinson, his number 2, the Maduro, the torpedo he has.
Yeah.
That is the second most viewed cigar review on Stogie Press. Thousands of views of that. Thousands.
Not the Leaf by Oscar. I mean, it's not that there's nothing bad about the number 2. Looks like a pencil.
Yep.
But the Leaf by Oscar, the iconic Leaf by Oscar with the leaf that covers the cigar, you know, that really took the world by storm. And as ugly as that cigar looks, it's what sells that cigar. Some people try to smoke it with the leaf over, but you just have to.
You ever see somebody light it with
all the time. But that really put him on the map, put Oscar on the map. And the irony is, Oscar didn't want him to do the leaf around it, and Jim's like, nope, put them all with the leaf on it. And second thing he didn't want him to do was put his name on the cigar. And boy, Oscar wouldn't be Oscar if that hadn't happened.
That's right.
So anyway, the Leaf by Oscar, that Jim owns that brand, and then he's got the Island Jim. Jim and I met in Cuba about 5 or 6 years ago. We became fast friends. He wasn't smoking Cuban cigars, and he doesn't. I don't know why, but and he was running out of his own cigars, so I was feeding him, you know, my LH stuff. And by the end of the week, he said, "Hey, Nick, how do I get these in my cigar lounge?" He happens to own a very, very popular and famous cigar lounge in Pittsburgh called the Leaf and Bean, which is what the original Leaf by Oscar was originally called, the Leaf and Bean. So I said, "Jim, I'm all ears. You tell me, what do you want to do?" I said, he goes, "I'd love to carry your cigars in my shop." And at that time I was pretty much only internationally. So I shipped it to him. He contacts me a couple months later. He goes, "Hey, Nick, next to my own stuff. Yours is the second best selling stuff. We got to get more people to get to know who you are as a blender. And I'm like, well, I'm all ears. You're the marketing guru. Whether he is or not, I don't know, but he's done an amazing job with what he's had. So he said, Nick, I won't be able to force my brokers to sell your brand, but if you make a cigar for me, we'll get them to smoke it and people get to know who you are. So initially that cigar was supposed to be called the Lavida Isla. So my brand LH stands for Lavida Habano. So the life of Havana. And that's based on the cigar lounges. That's how I got into the industry that are over in the Middle East. So we were trying to give, a piece of Havana in the deserts of Saudi Arabia and the Middle East. So the Lavida Isla was going to be a complete collaboration between the two of us in the sense that Island Jim, and the word for island in Spanish is Isla, La Vida meaning life. So I said, I got the perfect name for this cigar, Jim. It's going to be Island Life. And he said, great. So I make a band, I make a whole thing about it. We get hit by somebody in Florida, I'll say that, a smaller brand and retailer. And we get hit with a cease and desist. And right before the show, because we put out a press release, we got past it. So we can use that name. However, Jim at the time said, what, Nick, I don't want to wait. I don't care what we call it. Let's just call it the Nick and Jim and just get it out on the shelves. And I said, all right, Jim, I got a little better idea. How about we call it the Nick and Jim PBE? PB standing for pre-band edition. And what we'll do is we'll just
ask you that question, because I had one of those.
Right.
I was up at his place a while back, and I didn't know what PBE stood for.
And nobody told you?
No.
All right. Well, PB, a lot of people had a lot of fun with it. They're called the PBJ and this and that. And it stands for pre-band edition. And the fact that it has a very simple white band, and I went on the internet and I found the most crooked font that looks like an old typewriter, and we typed on there Nick and Jim PBE. So the idea was the first 20,000 sticks were just going to be the PBE, and it was all tongue-in-cheek. Even the boxes on the side, it said Island Jim logo goes here, La Vida Havana logo goes here, and it was supposed to be, not ready for prime time. And it did very well. People were excited about it. And then I said to Jim, we got to make some more. I go, can we go to the La Vida Isla name, branding now? And he said, no, hell no. He goes, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Let it ride. So we let it ride. So the Nick and Jim PBE still exists 3 years later. And so this past pandemic time, I'm like, well, the one thing I can get are these white paper bands that I make at the factory, and we just type them up. So I called Jim and I said, Jim, you want to do another Nick and Jim? I want to make another cigar. And he said, Nick, you know what? I got the leaf. I got this. He goes, you do it, man. So I said, okay. So dropped the Jim, just called it the Nick. Well, I just put Nick on the band. So people were calling the first cigar the Nick, but it was really the Panzone. And the name of the Panzone is because of the shape of it, because it's tapered on each end, fat in the center. And when I was at the factory, I was just calling it the Nick. I didn't have a name. And I'm listening to people mention, the rollers and the guys going, Panzone this and Panzone that. I'm like, I went to my partner. I said, what the hell's a Panzone? I speak a pretty okay Spanish, but I never heard that word. And they go, oh, Nick, that means like fat guy, hot belly. And I'm like, oh, they're making fun of me. They're talking about my gut. And they're like, no, Nick, it's because of the, the tapered and the heavy. And I go, okay, perfect name for a cigar. So called it the Panzone, but people still call it the Nick. And then right after that, everyone kind of commented on how that cigar kind of looks similar to the feral pig. And they said, hey, did you ever think about making like a flying pig looking cigar? And I said, yeah, I could do that. And basically it kind of looks like it's similar. The size is a botella, which means bottle. And this is called the Nick Jr. So the Nick Jr. Came out after that, and then made a Lonsdale version, which is what I'm smoking. People wanted a thinner, more pure, less filler cigar. Then they were like, hey, Nick, you ever think about doing a Toro? Toro's the #1 seller. And my first reaction was, well, you guys sell the Toro. It's called the Nick and Jim. I go, they're like, no, do the in the Nick blend. Do it in the Nick blend. I'm like, all right. So I made a Toro called the Nick, and they sell that as well. And it's got the same wrapper. I use the same wrapper on it, which I really
What
love
do
this wrapper.
So let's talk. Let's actually break the Nick down.
All right.
What's the average retail?
$11.
11.
11 for the Toro. The Panzone is 13 or 12.50. 12 between 12. Let's just say everything's between 11 and $13.
And what is the blend on this?
The blend, the wrapper, like I started to mention, is a seed that came from Cuba recently that we call the Vuelta Bajo seed, which we had planted. We have a farm that we lease in Ecuador, which I've used. I mean, we sell other wrappers, but I use that all the wrappers that come from our farm that we lease in Ecuador. So this is an Ecuadorian Vuelta Bajo seeded Ecuadorian, and the binder is also the same. And then in the fillers, I like to use a little filler from Peru that I find the synergistic effect between my Peruvian matched up to my minimum 3 to 5 year Nicaraguan that I use in the Nick, and basically add a little half a leaf of Brazilian Matafina in there to just give it that little extra. And I think it speaks for itself. People generally seem to like it. And what I love about it is there's a certain sweetness that comes off this wrapper that I've yet to be able to reproduce in some of the other wrappers I've tried. So I just love the wrapper, and I've been using it in a lot of stuff other than the Nick stuff. So that's the breakup.
The Peru leaf in the LH also, right?
Yeah. When when the way we found that Peruvian filler, I went to Peru. I met a guy in Cuba, and I'll mention Cuba a lot on this podcast because Cuba has been very important in my cigar journey and growth. That's kind of how I got in the business via Saudi Arabia. So not directly, but a lot of my training background and my palate was all Cuban. And so, yeah, Cuba is very important to me. And I met a gentleman there by the name of Gennaro, and he owns an Italian guy that owns some farms in Peru. And we met in Cuba, and he says, you got to come check out my Peruvian tobacco. I'd love to sell you some, because he was a real estate developer, and he bought these farms, and he was planning to develop it. And then something happened. He got stuck with this farm, and he's like, started working it. And, we started buying it, and it's pretty good. I don't personally like a Peruvian puro. I just think it's a little too one-dimensional with the tobaccos. I've played with it, but I just like it's that little different taste. Now, a lot of people are starting to use Peruvian. I wasn't even aware. I was just with Luciano of Ace Prime, and he says, I started using Peruvian too. And I'm like, wow, more and more people are starting to use Peruvian. And I just think it gives it that little extra. I mean, most people can pinpoint the Nicaraguan tobacco, but what's great about Nicaraguan tobacco, you have Jalapa, you have Condega, you have Esteli, many regions. You could do some great puros from Nicaragua, and they're all so different because the soil is so different in that country. But you add a little bit of that Peruvian in there, and it makes people go, what is that? So they get the familiarity of the Nicaraguan that they may be able to taste, but that Peruvian just kind of does something a little extra, and in my opinion, blows both of them up. And, I just like the flavor profile that it generates. And so I've been using a little Peruvian pretty much every one of my sticks so far. So that's it.
So if I for a hot second, when you're blending and are trying different tobaccos from different countries,
Mm-hmm.
what gives you that kind of, what makes that little light bulb go off in your head? Just like, I got, like, what is that thing, that creative
spark
that just goes off whenever you're smoking all these different blends, and you're just like, oh, you know what, this is okay, this is all right, this is good, but what makes something great for you? What makes it say, I'm going to put my name on this cigar? What does it have to be?
Well, I got to take a step back and talk about blending in general. When people blend, there's, it's great to just go. And I know AJ does this a lot. And if I was blending full time, which I'd love to do, if I could do just that, that's what I would do. I love blending and the creative process. It's therapy. It's my favorite part of this business. Just to be able to do that and just pick up different tobaccos from different countries, and you make a little purito and you get the flavor of that, and then you start putting them together. But generally now when I'm blending, I have a focus, or when I'm doing it for a private label or for another company or for whatever, they basically tell me, or even for my own stuff. Like right now, I'm in the process of making a new blend that I've pretty much finalized. So I knew what I was looking for. I knew what strength level I was in. So when you do that, you kind of have more of a direction. When you just have a big open white, canvas, that's fun too, because then you start playing and you never know. You may start here and then you end up going here and you end up twisting back, and that's all the fun of it. So I love doing that process. But when you have an idea in your head of what you're looking for, you know where to start. If you have an idea of what you're like, when you're doing for other people, other companies, they kind of tell you, hey, I like what I get out of this type of cigar. I like what I get out of this brand. I like this. And you start making notes and you go, okay, let's see what we can do. People, I always never like the term master blender. When people go, oh, Nick, master blender, I go, well, technically I'm the master blender of my own brand, but the word master to me means somebody that's been doing it for years and years and is just a pure expert. I've gotten pretty good. I've been doing it now since 2011, so I guess it's been a little over a decade. Can't tell you I've been doing it full time, but I try to do it as much as possible. And I've gotten good with certain countries, with certain tobaccos, and I'm always introducing new tobaccos. And that's, again, the fun of it, Quinton. But, there's 80 different countries that produce tobacco. And it's a lot, and it can be very overwhelming. And for some of the real masters, like Arsenio, that was with Aganorsa and some of these other guys, they had a catalog in their head of everything. My catalog doesn't run so deep. I'm about 10, 12 in, of where I'm supposed to be. I'd love to have, 50 different countries of tobaccos in my catalog of memory. But I pretty much start with what I'm familiar with, and then I'll add something different and see how that works to do something different. As far as that spark, you pretty much know. They call that the umami effect, or I call it the wow effect. When you just taste it and you go, wait a minute, there's something here that's just kind of cool. And you try to look for that, and then you build around that. Again, knowing where your strength level is going to be. And sometimes, like, I'll give you an example with the Nick. When I was making the Lonsdale version of it, I usually, when you do a blend for a line, all the tobaccos are the same. So I started again, and you blend it for the size. So with the Lonsdale, my Lonsdale happens to be a 46 by 6. So because it's much narrower, the Ligero that I was using in the other Vitolas was so coarse and so thick, it wasn't really burning right. And when you go thinner, like my Lanceros or my Lonsdales or my Coronas, the tobacco placement is so critical for a proper burn. So I started off with a more classical, 42, 44. Then I bumped it up to 46. Still wasn't going the way I was looking to go. So then I started using Dominican Ligeros, thinking in my, I should say ignorance, because you can get some really strong the Dominican Ligero, but the Ligero that I was using, I thought was going to be milder, or to match up with the Nicaraguan that I was using in the other Nick line. And it turned out to be stronger. So I was like, wow, this is a little bit stronger than my other ones. And I had people, I like to call it like a taste panel, and people that I run my cigars by. And they were like, no, man, Nick, leave it. This is great. This is a little bit stronger, but let it ride. So I left it, and it's a little stronger version of the Nick in the Lonsdale sense.
There you go. Long answer for a great question.
Sorry,
That's
I-
okay. That's okay. It's all about
long-winded
you,
answers.
except for a few little segments. But we're gonna get into a short segment right here. I'm gonna do a shout out to the sponsors. When we come back, what I want to do is dig a little more into what got you over to the Middle East and lounges. And let's talk a little of that history of your brand and because that's where you really made things happen.
Yeah.
All right, so let me give a shout out to the sponsors here. So today's show is brought to you by, and it should be showing up. Where is it? Oh, sorry. It's brought to you by Rodriguez Cigars of Key West. The year was 1947, and the Rodriguez family, they began the masterful art of cultivating tobacco on their private plantation in the town of Siguane, Cuba. In 1952, La Finca Comencita employed over 20 workers and grew over 120,000 pounds of tobacco annually. 8 years later, though, the Cuban government nationalized the private plantation, and the Rodriguez family was forced to immigrate to the United States. In 1971, the Rodriguez family found a new beginning on the beautiful island of Key West, Florida, and established the Rodriguez Cigar Factory in 1984. It stands today as the oldest cigar manufacturer in Florida Keys, preserving the historical cigar manufacturing industry that began in Key West in 1831. Of course, the years past, generation of family members have expanded manufacturing operations to Nicaragua, and they're proud to be working with some of the finest tobacco in the world. Rodriguez cigars are exclusively constructed with vintage leaves that have been hand-selected, aged, and constructed to the traditional Cuban manufacturing process. Check out Rodriguez Cigars at www.rodriguezcigarskeywest.com. And if you're ever in Key West, go check them out on the island. They are the best cigars down there. And take the cigar tour. You'll even get to roll your own cigar to take home with you. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Drew Estate.
Because Drew Estate is back and better than ever, with a party so big that only the Lone Star State can contain it. Music, spirits, mouth-watering barbecue, cigars galore, and so much more. It'll be the most epic shindig there ever was. Barnsmoker presents Savage Feast, October 22nd at the South Fork Ranch, Dallas, Texas. Get your tickets now at barnsmoker.com.
I can tell you right now, if you haven't been to the Barn Smokers in the past and you want to get to one, now's the time. I just came back from the Florida one. You want to have the pre-party ticket if you can get it. You get 2 days of absolute fun, smoking, eating, drinking, camaraderie, raffles. It goes on and on and on. Drew Estate has always given back to their fans, and this year is special. So check them out at barnsmoker.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Cigar Medics.
Before you light your next cigar, be sure to check out Cigar Medics, the makers of the patent-approved humidimeter. The humidimeter is a tool designed to display the relative humidity inside your cigar. With this device, there's no more guessing. Simply insert the probes into the foot or cap of your cigar, and you can instantly know if your cigar is ready to be smoked. Buy now on cigarmedics.com and see site for other cigar accessories. With the humidimeter, you'll know when to hold them and know when to smoke them.
Check out the Cigar Medics humidimeter at www.cigarmedics.com. I have one. I use it on a regular basis. It is something that I like to keep in my utility belt of tools for cigars. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends up in New York and around the country now, the Cigar Clowns. The Cigar Clowns are a Facebook group that are inviting everybody to come on their journey to find the perfect cigar. We know it's an oxymoron. It may not be everybody's perfect cigar, but if you're lucky enough to get your hands on one of their limited releases, you know what's been going on. You know what's up. If you haven't had one, stay tuned to the page, and when they drop a run and they're short and they go fast, Good conversation, great people, and smoking cigars. They want to welcome all brothers and sisters of the Leaf who share the same love as they do for cigars. Check them out. I know they're going to be starting up their Tuesday shows again, their Taste Test Tuesdays, where they will be looking at different blends and making decisions publicly as to which blend gets a Cigar Clown band on it. And lastly, today's show is brought to you by Platinum Nova Cigars. Platinum Nova is a family-owned and operated premium cigar company. Only the highest vintage tobacco and the most skilled hand workmanship go into the making of each Platinum Nova cigar, resulting in a timeless blend of art and craftsmanship. The Nova brand and the family's work are a tribute and an honor to their grandfather to always remember him and his infinite passion for the finest cigars. Their love for cigars started with their grandfather, a dedicated master blender and entrepreneur in the cigar industry. So the next time you're looking for the exquisite cigar experience, pick up a Platinum Nova. You can check them out at www.novacigar.com and on their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter channels. I want to thank my sponsors. For without them, this show is always a little harder to do, but we're going to come back right now to Nick, and let's talk about Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Lavida Habano lounges. I'm intrigued. How did that all start?
Well, I guess the first thing I got to talk about is how I started smoking cigars and eventually ended up leading me to Saudi Arabia. So, well, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. My first passion, was high-end audio, video, and electronics. I've been a gadget technology junkie, and I met a lot of friends along the way that became cigar guys, and it was technology and electronics that was my first love, and that's how I got into the tech world. So I had an audio video company called AVI Electronics based out of New Jersey, and we started doing home theaters and lounges and home automation for people around the country. And then that started getting me to different countries. And it's a very long story, but I ended up meeting a certain Crown Prince's son in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that was just a cigar guy. And over cigars, we bonded, and I started doing electronics theaters over in the Middle East, specifically Saudi Arabia. Things kind of came to a close in about 2008 with, the economy being what it was at the time. And after almost 20 years, it was time to close that chapter of my life and move on to something else. And I always was a cigar aficionado, having my first cigar in 1992. And the reason why I remember the year so vividly was because that was the year that Cigar Aficionado launched. So I got caught up in the craze with the first cigar boom, and was really into it, loved it. It allowed me to relax and smoke cigars. But for me, I realized how important the cigar was in my business world, the amount of friends and clients and very good associates that I met, and we bonded over cigars. And that was a big one with this particular Saudi prince. And then he said to me, look, why don't you open up a lounge here in Saudi Arabia? I'd love to get all these freeloaders out of my house. We can do a private lounge here and allow you to kind of do that for a while. And I said, well, I'll never live there, but you know what? Let's do it. It'll be a project. A good friend of mine who was actually his business manager he was the guy originally tasked really with the idea, and he kind of brought me in on it. And we opened up a lounge in Saudi Arabia, and it was called Lavida Habano. So I made the logo, and we sold, 90%, 99% Cuban cigars. I was actually the first guy that brought the Fuente, was the first distributor of Fuente in the Middle East, even Padron. But, back then, people weren't really smoking non-Cuban cigars. And lots of trips to Cuba. I learned a lot, went through the blending process. I got my master's certificate while I was in Cuba. And I met a lot of people in Cuba. And one of the gentlemen I met who became my future partner here at the lounge, he said, Nick, have you ever thought about doing a non-Cuban blend of LH? And I said, with all the real masters out there, and I can hardly get those, sold, because people were very less willing to try the non-Cuban stuff. I said, what am I supposed to bring to the table? And he said something that really caught me and made me think. He said, Nick, your clients' palates. What I've learned about you is you know how to tailor these, because I made the LH Cuban blend tailored customly to these clients out there. The Saudis, they love their cigars, and they really, they just want it, and they want it yesterday, and they really weren't so concerned with the price. They just wanted what they were looking for. So I kind of figured out what they were looking for, and I made an LH house blend originally. And these folks would take it to different countries. And so they would go to, and they were very generous. And I would get all these calls from all these different countries and saying, hey, I got this cigar with this very simple band that just has an LH on it. What does that mean, and what is it? And it means LH, means Lavida Habano. And literally the band was just this little thing on a black, small Romeo and Juliet style band. And they were starting to call it LH. So I continued calling it LH. That house blend eventually, from being Cuban, started making non-Cuban blends. It started branching out. Before you know it, I'm in 16 different countries, and I'm selling cigars throughout the world. And initially, it was never my plan or idea to come to the U.S. Because, listen, it was busy. There's 5 million brands out there to begin with, and I didn't want to be 5 million in one. And the difference with my cigars, because my palate was Cuban, and I was basically making the cigar for people that normally only tended to gravitate towards Cuban cigars. So my cigar kind of became known as the bridge cigar, the bridge between old Cuban cigars, the old world, to the new world of new world cigars. And that bridge cigar, I know the quality is there. One thing I will say, because the factory is based in Costa Rica, the rollers that we have, minimum like 20-year age of experience between these guys and gals. And so construction is paramount, and that's, half the battle with a lot of these cigars. So the cigars are well made, and the blends, I started with one blend, turned to two, turned to three. And so the original 3 blends of the LH started with a Connecticut shade Ecuadorian, milder cigar that's very, very similar to a Cuban, tasting cigar. Then I did a Habano 2000 seeded Ecuadorian, which I call my Colorado. And then I did a Criollo leaf Maduro that's got a little bit of the spice and some of the pepper taste in there. But the difference with, my cigars and some of these other stronger cigars, even though I call that a full-bodied cigar, some people may say, it's medium plus. And a lot of people don't understand or don't realize that a lot of times, a lot of these cigars are so harsh or under fermented that gives you that nicotine, or it has that very high content of nicotine. I've removed a lot of the nicotine. So even with my full-bodied cigars, when you retro them, you're not going to get that burn. So a lot of people think, it's not that strong. It's full-bodied. I like to just say full-bodied. So those are the 3 original. Yes. So those are the 3 blends of the LH, and I'm continue to make different things as well. And I love what I do. It's a passion, and people say, how long are you going to do this? Or when do you plan on retiring? I go, never. As long as I can go out. I love meeting with people. I love meeting with cigar smokers in general. And if they're enjoying one of my cigars, I get the warm fuzzies like, hey man, I make something that somebody's enjoying. I'm good. Life is good.
Now, Nick,
yeah.
in my short time with you at Vintage, I definitely picked up on that passion that you have, just in how you interact with the people, how you put them on your cigar. I can honestly say, out of the 3 blends, Jimmie, you have the blends right there in front of you, right?
I have 2 of them.
So
a Connecticut and Maduro. And I will say, last night, and I have to put a review out on it just for the fun of it, I have the Black Band LH.
Yes.
That's the limited edition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So hold up that Maduro for me so that people can see that band. So when I tell you that slowly but surely, that cigar right there, when I had somebody come into the lounge and they would say, you know what, I'm looking for something medium to full, that was my number one go-to for people that were looking for something medium to full, because of what you said and how you just described it. It is a full-bodied smoke, but if you can put somebody on that cigar that is maybe a medium smoker, it does not smoke like a full body, but it definitely has that punch, but it's a lot more of a mellow punch, like what you said. So I definitely wanted to applaud you on that, because that is one of my favorite smokes in that entire humidor. And you've seen the humidor at Vintage. They've got a lot of different blends in there, but that is probably one of the easiest transitions for me to put people on.
The other one, Quinton, that is, I think people are starting to realize it more and more of late. And I like to say I was a little bit ahead of the game. A lot of people tend to poo-pah Connecticut's, or I only smoke full-bodied cigars, or I only smoke stronger cigars. But people don't realize they should smoke everything. And a lot of times the guy that smokes a more medium plus to full-bodied, I hate to use the word force, but I'll say, hey, man, try one of these. This is a Connecticut seed. Oh, I don't do Connecticut's. You want to do this Connecticut. And the reason for that is my Connecticut has so much flavor. And that's actually a subdued version. My original Connecticut was so strong for a Connecticut. The feedback I got in the US was, this is great, but it's a little strong. So I toned it down, and actually that became one of my first limited releases. And it's actually a regional release where I have certain shops, and I call that the Black Label Connecticut. And that's a even stronger version of the existing Clado line. The Clado line's got so much flavor. So I say it's the perfect cigar in the morning with an espresso. It's very mild, but yet full of flavor. That's one I like to get people to try. I don't care if they smoke LFD or they smoke the strongest cigars that are out there. Try that Connecticut. I'm not saying it's going to be your everyday smoke, but it could be your every morning smoke. And that's what I'm looking for people to expand their palates. And I always do that. If somebody tells me they only smoke Connecticut's, I'll go out and give them a medium plus. And they're like, oh, this has a dark wrapper. Does that mean it's strong? I'm like, no. Because again, if the cigar is properly fermented, it may have more body than you're accustomed to, but you're not going to get that burn. And the best part about it is it's going to be clean. The next day, you're not going to feel that harshness or that in the back of the throat, like, oh man, I smoked too many cigars. Just not going to happen with my cigars. And that all comes down to properly fermented, and the way that we properly ferment, not only ferment the cigars, but we have a couple different processes the way we do it. And I'm not saying other people don't, but it's just some people tend to want to do it that way. And just because people are looking, I get people all the time saying, Nick, would you make a stronger cigar? Would you make a stronger cigar? So right now, my challenge has been to make a stronger cigar, stronger than anything I've ever released so far. But everything I do, people are always like, well, I'm like, look, I'm just not going to make it harsh, and I'm just not going to do a nicotine, but I'm going to put as much flavor in there that you could possibly take. But I want to put some tanginess to it. I want your mouth to be able to go, like something there, like a little bit of bitter and sweet all at the same time. That's going to make your mouth really just have an explosion of flavors with that full bodied. And that's what I'm in the process of doing now with this new blend. And hopefully it'll be a big hit.
Well, I can tell you that Chris Colter, one of our followers, has stated that LH has never let me down, enjoyable every time, and consistently great quality.
Hey, Jimmie, real quick, and I'll fade to black for a little bit, no pun intended. What is your QC like at your factory? Because obviously one of the things that most cigar smokers are interested in is quality and consistency. What does that look like at the facility that your cigars come out of?
Well, listen, I'm all about transparency, and, talking to Jimmie before the show a little bit, I had the pleasure of spending quite a bit of time with Luciano from Ace Prime. And, hopefully he'll be a long-term friend, because the one thing we bonded over was that there's just too much bullshit in this industry, and there's not enough transparency, and he's all about transparency, and so am I. I will say this, in my process of learning, the factory that I bought into, I picked up a lot of stuff from every other factory. A factory that initially I had no interest in visiting because of my ignorance was Drew Estates. We're talking 15 years ago. I'm like, I don't do infused cigars. I don't do flavored. I really don't want to go visit the Drew Estates factory. Well, you know what? I'm so glad I did. I met Nick Melillo when he was, 15 years younger, and he was there and he was running the quality control there. And I loved the system that he had in place, and some of the other factories that I visited. What we do is right now in our factory, we have 33 pairs of Buchero and a Rolero. And we usually have 4 or 6, but usually minimum of 4. Every table has got a scale that weighs the cigars at the table and the gauge, so they're checked at the table. We have one supervisor that usually minimum of 4, sometimes 6, depending on who's out that day or something, especially with the pandemic. But his job is to check every cigar at the table where they're being rolled. Then they all go in the back, draw tested, and then a secondary construction test. So one thing I have to say, when people go, oh, man, cigars, your construction is perfect. And not to sound arrogant, but I expect that at this point, because, I always tell people, whether or not you like my blends or you like the cigars that I produce, the one thing I guarantee is you're going to have a very nice smoking experience, because the construction of that cigar is going to be spot on. And the reason is because not only of the quality control that we put in place, but the other factor is the average age of experience between all the rollers that we have is about 20 years. And the reason we can get all these high quality top guys is because we're in Costa Rica. And people go, well, what does that have to do with it? And it's very simple. If I were to recommend somebody start a cigar company, the last place you want to do it, honestly, is in Costa Rica. And the reason for that is because everything is just more. Import tax is more, export is more. Costa Rica just charges more for everything. And not to mention the labor laws. All our rollers, they have a union, and basically are getting paid 4 to 5 times what the average roller will make in, say, Nicaragua. So not because I hate to say it that we're so generous, it's because that's what the law is, and that's what we have to pay these guys. And they deserve it. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but when you can make 4 or 5 times what you normally make by crossing over the border or being lucky enough, there's no loyalty at that point. Hey, listen, I'm just gonna make 4 times as much as I'm making now doing the same thing I'm making. So literally we have people, batting down our doors. So we never have a shortage of rollers. We could swell up to whatever we need to, and sometimes we do. Sometimes we get up to 100 rollers. When we do, we can back it down. We have a training program in place, a 9-month program for Costa Ricans, because, the main family that owns the factory, they're Costa Rican, and they're all about giving back to their people. And so we do employ Costa Ricans, but we have a lot of talent, and the quality is there. And again, not to sound arrogant, but one thing I stress is the quality control, the construction of our cigars. I'd put it up to anybody that's out there.
That's
Now,
awesome.
you still have the shops in Saudi Arabia, in the Middle East?
Yes, some of them. We opened up in Beirut. Spent $1 million, not my own money. We had investors, which sadly, but once we opened there, within a year, Bloomberg, offered any city that was willing to take his money to go smokeless. And it's like, in Beirut and Lebanon, outside of Cuba, there's no other country that seems to smoke as much as they do. If it's not cigars, it's hookah. They smoke everything over there. So we had to change all these things, and glass that opens, and it just didn't survive. It was a beautiful lounge. So we had one in Beirut that closed. It was in the downtown souks area there, and it was fantastic. 2-story humidor. I called it the nuclear reactor. The one in Riyadh is still there. I no longer have any personal interest in it, because once this new regime came in place, we all know about MBS, and I don't know if people heard about, the arrests that were made, and they basically rounded up every prince and kind of kept them there until they gave half their money or so. Well, the majority owner partner of that lounge was one of these guys that just didn't go back. And so without getting into the politics of it, I like not to keep politics and religion and cigars,
Good
but
idea.
I still sell cigars in Saudi Arabia, but I'm no longer, even though the name's still Lavida Habano, and I still have, all the same, I kept all the same employees, thankfully, with the exception of my my partner, Omar, who was the managing partner, and they ousted him. But other than that, I have people all the time. They go, "Hey, Nick, I'd love to get into your lounge if I could." And I'm like, "Well, I can get you in." I make a call, and it's a great experience, a beautiful lounge. But no, I don't have any interest anymore.
Now, how many lounges do you have outside the United States, except with the exception of Saudi Arabia?
When you say lounge personally own?
No,
Zero.
how many
no.
are you in?
In the U.S. right now, I'm about 300 shops, lounges, 16 to 18 countries. So I don't know. The beauty of being outside the U.S. is much more of a grind because you deal with all the stores individually. With other countries, you deal with a distributor, sometimes two. And so I have no idea how many shops they're actually in, but I know they're being sold in that country. But in the U.S., I have some saturated markets, and then I have some sparsely shops, and I'll have maybe some states two, some states none, some states, a good following. So, it's a process. It's a very difficult process in the U.S. You have about 2,000 cigar shops, and it's a grind to get in because there's just so many different brands. And as I was telling Jimmie before the show, it's my job to hopefully have a lounge owner or a shop owner give me 5 minutes to be able not only to let them experience the cigar, but it's all about, hey, man, I'm just not a guy slapping a label on a band. And I've been around for a while, and I will be there for the long term. And not to mention the quality of cigars and the other brands that we make in our factory that come out of there. If they give me a shot, I like to. When I first started, I was all about just opening doors, and now I don't care. I don't want to say I don't care, but it's like I'd rather not. I'll walk into a certain shop and I'll go, "Yeah, no, my cigar's not going to make it in here. I don't even want to bother." And they're like, "Hey, wait a minute, why not? Let's give it a shot." You know what? If you're just going to buy 6 to 8, SKUs and throw it out there and not give it at least an honest effort, it's, people are going to walk by it. They don't know. There's just too many things to choose. So I don't really do a lot of marketing. And there's a reason for it. For me, I know I should do marketing. I don't do marketing because I really want the cigar to kind of speak for itself and for it to grow organically. Could I grow a lot quicker overnight and build that way? I could. But you want to know something? In my other past lives in business, I did well. I had my ups and downs. And a lot of time I was just fixated on the bottom line and growing and making money. And I really tended not to enjoy, as they say, step back and smell the roses. So right now I'm enjoying what I do. I love making partners with lounges and having personal relationships with companies that will, offer my cigar and say, "Hey, Mr. Customer, I know you smoke ABC brand, but I got this brand that may be right up your alley. Maybe you should try this and see what you think."
Now, you do a lot of events.
I do.
So what's an event? What's an LH event like?
An LH event is me generally talking about Cuba or about my cigars, but it's people telling. I do a lot of cut and lights, and I like people to experience, and I like talking about anything related to cigars, and you get to meet me, and I'll talk to anybody and everybody. One of my favorite quotes and lines that I've been using forever is I call the cigar the great equalizer. And what I mean by that is, cigars really kind of just go past socioeconomic backgrounds, race. It doesn't matter. Everybody's the same. That's what's so great. You can have a CEO of a Fortune 500 company sitting next to a guy that's, just happens to be a, whatever, blue collar, sweeps, whatever, sweeps the floors. Not everybody's the same. It doesn't matter how much you make. It doesn't matter.
Like
you enjoy cigars. That's all I need to know, you know? And you really get to bond with the people individually. You get to sit with the person and everything else goes away. It's just that person, you know, what he's about. You learn about the guy. This is, for me, what's so important is that it's a magical leaf that brings people together. And I just love it. I just love the fact that you can make fast friends with people and somehow, like, you know, yeah, you can have drinks with somebody and get to be chummy and you have a lot in common. But with a cigar, you already have a lot in common right there. And, you know, it just does something. And I love meeting the people. And if I can make something that somebody enjoys, man, I mean, I know it sounds corny, but to me, that's the best enjoyment of this business. Having people enjoy things that I produce, that I, you know, with love, like to make blends. Of course, I started making blends that I like, but I want to make blends that people like. I know I can make blends and my personal, what I think I'm really good at is being able to make a blend specific to that person. I can tell you for Jim, when I made Jim's, Nick and Jim cigar, I told him originally, you know, Jim, I don't know if you'll sell one stick of this, but I guarantee you're going to like it. And what gives me great pleasure in knowing that he owns the Leaf by Oscar, Island Jim, but yet if you see that man, all he smokes is the Nick and Jim. He's very protective. He like only travels. He's got to have at least 10 bundles with him at all times. And he makes sure he has those, and he smokes those, and he smokes a lot of them because he loves that blend. And I love that I was able to make a blend for his palate that other people enjoy. And that I really enjoy that when people like. So when I talk to people and I get to know what they like and what cigars they normally smoke, and I can steer them to a certain cigar that I have, and they hit it and they go, wow, I just love that about it. So events is pretty much just meeting me and talking about cigars and shooting the shit and talking cigars. I have spent a lot of time in Cuba. That's kind of my I'd say my level of expertise. I know a thing or two about Cuba. I've made a number of trips over there. I used to do right up to the pandemic, cigar tours over there. And I will continue those again when the time is right. Because I love having people experience the birthplace of cigars. And that's another magical place for me is Havana. When you step off the plane there, it's not only going back in time, but it's literally going to a different planet because things there, good and bad, are quite different.
Wow. Let me take another break here. We're going to go through quick what's new in news and reviews and things on Stogie Press. We haven't done a show in 2 weeks because I've been actively involved in family life and other things. So I'm going to try to go through these really quick. So what you might have missed on Stogie Press. When it comes to reviews, we had some reviews out. The last reviews we ended with, I believe, was the Drunk Chicken. That was the last time I talked about reviews. I reviewed the Renato Cigars Grand Apex Robusto Extra. That came in an 88. That cigar is a Mexican San Andreas with a Nicaraguan binder and filler. It's $12.35 cigar. It's got a medium to full strength to it. Rather flavorful with bacon spice and caramel and down toasted crackers. It had a nice thing. There was a bit of harshness to it, so they got dinged on some points there. And it comes in two sizes, a Robusto Extra and a Gordo. Nice construction. Had a little bit of a burn issue in the beginning and kind of get a little ding right in there. Still had a little bit of a wonky burn, so it lost some points on that. But overall, you're going to get some early pepper to the nose. You're going to get, there's a bit of a harshness right off the front. The ash was flaky. I don't like flaky ashes, so unfortunately they lose a point. And then it kind of kicked in with the flavors, with the toasted cracker and the bacon spice and the fruit, and really started developing as it got into the second, third, and then down into the end. It kind of really morphed into this espresso and dark cocoa gem. So hour and 40-minute smoke, not bad, 88. We also looked at, this is a new cigar from La Serena. So when I was out in California the other week for a wedding, I had the luxury of actually going to the cigar and spirits tasting out in Newport Beach. And one of the vendors there was La Serena, and our friend Danny Dickovich. And what he was handing out was this new one called the Mexican Mermaid. As you know, La Serena is all about mermaids. His wife is all about mermaids, who actually owns the company. So this is called the Mexican Mermaid. It's all dressed up with Mexican colors, with the red and the green. This cigar comes in at a 90. It's a Mexican San Andreas wrapper with a Mexican San Andreas binder. And then it's got a Mexican and a Dominican filler. It's as close to a Mexican puro as you're going to get. What would this cigar, it's coming in 4 different vitolas, ranging between $14 and $16. It's a nice looking cigar, but I'm going to have to say that the binder, being that Mexican San Andreas, that thick leaf along with the thick wrapper, it was just giving it some burn issues. So it lost its points mostly on the burn coming through. But flavor wise, it was very pleasant on the flavor. It had this bittersweet cocoa. It had cedar notes and earthy and nut aromas. There was some sweetness that grew with the dry cocoa note as it burned down through with a developing black coffee. I really liked the flavor. If the burn was a little better, this cigar probably would most definitely have scored a little higher, but it is what it is. This next one here was the Cigar Clowns 3-ring circus. Early in the year, they came out with 3 different cigars called the 3-ring circus, and they were created individually for different shops, both brick and mortar and online. This one here is called the Greeny. It's a little short Robusto. It's a short smoke, little less than an hour. It's a Nicaraguan hybrid Habano with a Nicaraguan binder and filler. So you kind of have a Nicaraguan puro in this. It's a $10 cigar. I'm sorry you can't get these. If you can find them, get one. It's a nice cigar. It's got some nice caramel and cocoa and dry fruit notes, maple syrup aroma. This thing just kept pouring out this maple syrup aroma. And anybody that smoked it will probably say the same thing. They were getting that all the time. And some natural sweetness, pepper, and spice that ran through it. They come in these little 5-pack packages, paper packs. And like I said, it's part of this thing called the 3-ring circus. They were making this for the Caravan Cigar Company, is where they launched it and was selling it when they made the drop. So nice cigar, a little bit of a offsetted burn cone, but not bad going through. Smoking time a little shy of an hour. Great little short smoke if you want to, if you don't have the time to spend the 2 hours to smoke a cigar. And then I just recently put out the CAO Pilon Añejo Robusto. This is a spectacular cigar. I believe this might be the last cigar that Ricky Rodriguez blended, or at least one of the last ones that he blended for CAO before he branched off to do his West Tampa Cigar Company that he now is a part of. This is an Ecuadorian Sumatra with a Honduran binder and a Dominican and Nicaraguan filler. This cigar is $8.89. So, I mean, just the price alone says I got to try it. But when you try it, and I smoked 3 of these, it is just a plethora of flavor. It's a cornucopia of flavor running through this, with cocoa and dark chocolate and cocoa powder and dry leather and floral. And it seems like it's all over the place, but it was very balanced as it was going through. I was very surprised with it as it burned through. I really enjoyed it. The burn on this, okay, the construction, very beautiful construction. The burn, absolutely beautiful burn. Nice long ash. Stogie press, signature burn cone right there. That's what I want to see. And when that ash drops the first time, that is exactly what I want to see on the end. Had a little bit of an off there, but then it caught itself right back up. Absolutely beautiful cigar. If you get a chance, get these cigars. This is a box-worthy cigar in my mind. For $8.89 alone, you should be putting these in your humidor and checking them out. News-wise, I'm not going to go through all the details in the news because there's a lot of news. We will say that Drew Estate has now launched a new Nica Rustica in what's called the Adobe line. That was the Freestyle Live mystery cigar. They did hand these out to the people that went to the pre-event at the Barn Smoker. So I do have a few of these. I will be reviewing them. Cigars for Warriors celebrated their 10 years supporting the troops. So if you have an opportunity to support Cigars for Warriors, just remember it's the 10-year anniversary this year. Drew Estate also released a limited edition Herrera Esteli Lanceros. When we talk about flavored cigars, everybody's all jumping up and down and everything. Well, General and the company came out with the new Fireball Cinnamon cigars. So if you like fireballs, this is a Fireball Cinnamon cigar. Yes, it is it's an infused cigar, but they come in tins and also in a larger, I think, Robusto version where you can get in a 5-pack or whatever. But this is something that should be hitting the shelves. Cuatro Cinco announced their Edition Americana 2022 as a TAA cigar. Check that one out. Room 101 and the Luxury Cigar Club got together and they announced they have a cigar called the Cherubs. So that's available through the Luxury Cigar Club. Alec Bradley came out with a Taste of the World chunk. So they took a lot of their most popular cigars and they made short versions of them. And they're making these in time for Father's Day this year. So if you're looking for a great gift for somebody and then you want to go into the Alec Bradley line, this is a great sampler of short, chunky cigars of all their popular brands. Blackwork Studio released the 2022 Hyena. General released the Chillin' Moose, which is spawned the Bull Moose now. So now they have this one called the Bull Moose. And J.C. Newman announced that they are beginning their first 2022 shipment of Yaguas. So if I'm a Yagua fan. I do love this cigar. I love just the whole way it's packaged, how they press the cigars without putting them in presses. They just tighten them in. They wrap it in this Yagua and they tie it tight. And you get these cigars are all different kinds of shapes at the end. I've had them where they're super flat. I've had them with a triangular, square. Depends on where they are in that bundle. It's a fun little marketing that they do on it. And Casa Cuevas now, if you are in Canada, Casa Cuevas is up in Canada. So if you're in Canada and you're looking for these Casa Cuevas cigars we always talk about, you should be able to find them. Macanudo announced their gold label is returning to retail, and Sinestro Cigars announced a flurry of new cigars. They had 5 new cigars that they just came out with. Because of the pandemic, things got backed up and they were able to produce these 5 and they've released them. A couple other things about Stogie Press. We now have launched Q's Corner. Yes, this is Q's Corner. This is Quinton Brown's own page where Quinton gets to write whatever he wants and talk about whatever he likes in the cigar world. And his first article was about Freud cigars taking over New York City. Quinton had a great opportunity to go visit the launch of this at the Carnegie Club in New York. It was a private event. I was able to get him in there, and he did a great little article and talks about Freud cigars. We'll have more of that coming on. We hopefully will have Freud cigars on the show soon. And we also put out the latest Take It to the Nub. So if you missed the Rodriguez Olivan show, that's out there now with Ismail, and also the Dallas Leaf show is out there now on the YouTube channel. And I think this is old news. So we did the Underground Cigar Shop review. So we have more reviews coming out of lounges. I've been backed up on those. So that's what's new in news and reviews on Stogie Press. I know it's a little longer segment today than normal, but I had to compress 2 weeks, let everybody know what's there. Stay tuned to your newsletter. It's always going to highlight the same thing. With that, I want to come back to the show and let's talk to Nick. You said smoking cigars back in the boom. What was your first premium cigar back then?
Well, honestly, it was something mild. I mean, I started smoking. I've actually had this obsession with tobacco when I was in grade school. Literally, I've told this story and it's 100% true. I was literally in third or fourth grade, and I went to this chain of, there was called Bradley's. I don't know what you call it. It's kind of like a Sears, and they had a little tobacco section. And I remember for a couple dollars, I bought a 25-cent, corn cob pipe and a little stomper and a little bag of tobacco, and proceeded to get sick right away. But something kept making me go back to it. I smoked a pipe through college. And then it was really around 92 when I had my first cigar. One of my managers in my electronics business gave me a cigar. It might have been a Macanudo. It was something mild. And I just remember I had that, what I call the aha moment, going, wow, I think I get this. This is pretty cool. And started smoking that cigar. And I talked about the Cigar Aficionado magazine, but across the street from where my office was, there was a B. Dalton bookstores. I ran over there and I said, I got to learn everything about cigars. And I bought every book I could find on cigars. And on the way out, there was a newsstand. I look over and big words, cigars, hit me right there. And I go, they make magazines about cigars? Why haven't I ever seen this before? And of course, I wasn't looking, but it turned out to be the inaugural issue of Cigar Aficionado magazine. I read it from cover to cover, like most new cigar people do, and I was hooked and started my journey in becoming a cigar aficionado, reading everything I could, enjoying cigars. I always had a hard time relaxing or just chilling, and that's what the cigar did for me. I was able to sit in my office and I knew the next 45 minutes to an hour I was just going to relax and enjoy and experience the cigar.
Remember when you could do that, sitting in your office and smoke a cigar or a pipe?
Yeah. Well, the whole world has gone upside down with that. But yeah, that's how I started. And somebody, of course, turned me on to Cuban cigars very early. And like most people that smoke Cuban cigars, they do it because it's the forbidden fruit. It's the stuff you can't get, so it must be better, right? And at the time when I was smoking, it wasn't so great, but I didn't know any better. I joined a Cigar of the Month club. Actually, was the first one out. The guy from The Apprentice, Bill something, had that club. And yeah, it was kind of cool. They give you a little card, had all the information on it. I remember smoking my first Nicaraguan cigar, and I'm going, what the hell is this? This was like ridiculously too strong for my taste. But I have to say, Nicaragua from the 90s to now has really grown up, because I believe originally, all the Cubans that left the island and went to different areas, the Dominican, they thought was the closest to everything. And then when they ventured to Nicaragua, they were trying to use the same processes, I think. And with Nicaraguan soil being so rich in minerals and so strong, that it needs a lot more fermentation and a lot more care. But when you do it right, you can produce some great stuff from Nicaragua. So, the beginning was way too strong. I got to be, my first brand that I loved was, it was called Indios Puros.
Oh, yeah.
Rolando Reyes Sr., and growing up in Jersey, he was in Union City. I walked into a shop and we became fast friends, and I became friends with Rolando Reyes Jr. And, he took me to the first Big Smoke when they had their first Big Smoke in New York. And man, I was just into it, and I got to be friends with, and thankfully I can still call friends people like Carlito Fuente. And so we're going on 25, 30 years of smoking. And the last 12 or so in the industry. But something about cigars, like I said.
That's it. Q, you're on mute.
I got a question for you. So,
Hit me.
out of all the cigar tobacco that we've talked about tonight.
Mhm.
A lot of the times, me and my friends, we sit around at the cigar shop and we talk about a ton of stuff. We like to play a little game, and we have to pick one that we would marry, one that we would sleep with, and then
Okay.
one that we would dump in the trash.
Okay.
So out of all the cigar blends, out of all the cigar tobacco that you've talked about today, you got to marry one, sleep with one, and kick one in the trash. Give me your 3.
Of my own, or
No.
No,
Just tobacco as a whole. That out of all the blends that you've had the opportunity to smoke yourself and test and try, put in blends, different things like that. What are your 3 using those categories?
Well, you're talking about tobacco or cigars? The actual
Tobacco.
Tobaccos. Well, I can tell you that, each country has very unique tastes. And I've tried to work with some tobaccos. Being in Costa Rica, a lot of people mistakenly say my cigar is a Costa Rican cigar. It's not incorrect, because it technically is. It comes from Costa Rica. I can tell you I don't use any Costa Rican tobacco because I personally haven't been really able to blend well with it. I don't think a puro of it. It's not my cup of tea. There is some Pedal de Oro that comes from there. And believe me, it would be a lot cheaper for me to produce because we wouldn't have to import it. But personally, my palate, I don't really care for the Costa Rican tobacco so much. I've tried using a little bit in different blends, and I've yet to come across some Costa Rican tobacco that I go, wow, I got to use some. You never know. The great thing about tobacco and even countries is, all the microclimates in certain countries, like, Cuba and other countries, you could have one farm and the one across the street will be totally different. So it's hard to put a blanket, Cuban versus this. I do like Cuban tobacco, but Cuban tobacco as a cigar dimensionally, there's less you can do as far as the complexities. I mean, they make some fantastic cigars, but when you talk about a country like Nicaragua that has so many different growing regions that are so uniquely different, and because of the elevation and the volcanoes and the streams underneath, where it's just a really good country. So if I had to marry one, well, it would be I would say Ecuador.
Okay.
Because Ecuador, in my opinion, makes the best wrapper. And there's a reason for it. And one of the main reasons is because it has a natural shade, from the cloudiness that's in that island, and the way there's so much cloud, there's a natural shade that occurs. So I believe that the wrappers there, because of that, you see, the reason why you want shaded tobacco versus non is because if it's, the leaves actually try to grow out to try to capture more sun, so they get bigger and finer. So aesthetically, they're much more pleasing. So to me, Ecuador makes the best wrapper, bar none, of all the stuff that I've seen out there. Not as, it's just finer. And again, Ecuadorian puro, not enough, but Ecuador is also very expensive, the tobacco. So if I had to pick one tobacco that I had to have, would be Ecuadorian. But
what's your side piece? Your side piece is Nicaragua?
Has to be Nicaragua. Between Nicaragua and Ecuador, you could make, I could make so many different blends out of those two countries that I could never get tired. Those are the two best. Like I said, I do like my Peruvian. I do like a lot of other, countries. I've played with Honduran tobacco. There's a certain grittiness that I like, but also it's very, for me, difficult to blend that grittiness. I don't want to say dirty, but it's got this like little taste that when I try to mix it with what I've done with other tobaccos, I haven't been successful. I'll tell you a funny story. My original idea was, when I was doing the Nick and Jim cigar, was to use some of the Honduran tobacco that Oscar Valadares uses and mix that, with the stuff that we use. And I just couldn't get a blend that I thought was good enough. And Jim's like, don't worry about it. Just do what you got to do. So I go back to the tobaccos that I'm more familiar with, that I have more experience with. And again, there's so many different variations that you can do. But here's another thing that people discount. It's not just about the tobacco. Like when I say transparency, you know, people go, "Oh, you're telling people your blends. You don't care. You tell exactly what leaves you use, how many leaves you use, this and that. Aren't you worried that somebody's going to steal your blends?" And absolutely not. What people don't realize, I try to make an analogy that it's not a good one, but it kind of works. It really comes down to the cooking. Like you could have a chef that you can give all 5 chefs, you know, Michelin, 5-star Michelin, this and that, and 3 guys with the exact same ingredients, but yet they're going to create totally different dishes. And it's all because of how they prepare it and cook it. And cooking, the analogy for cooking in tobacco is fermentation. So the way you're fermenting stuff is what makes all the difference. It's, you know, at what temperature. Some people rush the fermentation, or maybe let it go a little hotter, a little faster because they don't want to wait as long, or whatever their formula happens to be. You know, we use second fermentation. We use with our Dominican, we use circular pilones as far as the rectangular ones. Little tricks, little things that you do in the cooking process that make that tobacco. I can use the same tobacco somebody else uses, and I do it differently. So the cooking is what really makes it. So you could use the same tobaccos and prepare them differently and ferment them differently, and you get totally different blends out of the same things. So again, I love to, as I grow in this process, start working with a lot more. I love to use tobaccos from Mexico, especially, you know, San Andreas area. That's been a hotbed. I love Brazilian tobacco. I use a lot of it in some of the blends that I have now, and I plan on using more of that. Just stuff that's different. But the key is that they all kind of mesh together correctly, because that's what it comes down to. If it doesn't, you realize that you may have 3-4 different tobaccos that are fantastic individually. Each does their part in whatever they're supposed to be, whether it be for combustion or aroma or what have you. But if they don't mix, they don't mix, and that's what the process is about it, and that's what's fun about it. It's very therapeutic for me anyway.
So, so we're beyond the hour. At this point, we like to do a fast lightning round. So these are the questions that you keep really short. Okay.
All right. I'll try.
Try your best. I know you're from New Jersey.
Right.
You like New Yorkers. We like to talk. I'll
Just shut me up, Jimmy. Just tell me. Just put your.
I'll start it off. Growing up, who was your celebrity crush?
Jennifer Aniston. I would say Jennifer Aniston. I mean, everybody loved Farrah. You know, I remember the poster. With the red bathing suit. You know, everybody saw that. But I just thought Jennifer was. You know, I love blondes. My wife's blonde. So I guess blondes. Jennifer Aniston. Short.
All right.
Jennifer Aniston.
Quinton, got a question.
What's your favorite sport to watch on TV?
Favorite? Basketball. The last 2 minutes especially.
There you go.
You know. Baseball. I love baseball too, but you know, it's an all-day affair. I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of hockey on TV, but a live hockey, there's nothing like it. And I've also loved soccer, or football as they call it everywhere else. Again, but that's 90 minutes. But basketball.
What do you do in your spare time, if you have any?
Spare time? Spare time. My life is consumed by cigars and tobacco, and I'd have it no other way. Thankfully, my wife allows me the privilege of doing what I do. She knows I love it. I love spending time with my son. He lives in Austin, Texas. He's coming up in a couple weeks. He's actually coming up this week. We're going to my brother's daughter's wedding, so that'll be fun. So family time's great, but most of the time, if I'm not studying, reading, learning about tobacco, I'm out smoking, meeting people. So yeah, that's my passion. That's my hobby. and that's my relaxation. So I'm pretty one-dimensional there.
Would you go to college if you did?
I went to Seton Hall University in New Jersey, South Orange, New Jersey.
Your major?
My major originally was computer science because I had a computer consulting company, so I thought I had to do that. My first business was 17 with a consulting company, but I realized early on that I'd rather sell it than write the code and all that. So I switched to communications, but then I went back because I became a police officer. So I went and converted my degree, and then I got a bachelor's in criminal justice as well. So communications, criminal justice.
Oh, thank you for your service. Quinton, question.
Seton Hall University,
Go
or
Pirates.
there's a little bitty school right down the road from Seton Hall that just happened to make their nice little run in the NCAA tournament. Who you taking in a pickup game?
Oh, well, you know, they're obviously, you know, the coach now is the head coach of Seton Hall, so that's kind of cool. Who am I taking? I don't know. Like I watched it, but I don't really watch college as much. I watch more of the professional stuff, so I couldn't tell you. Pickup, I'm more back in the Jordan days, and I love the Celtics back in the day. My days of really watching basketball was in the 90s, 80s and 90s. I watch it now, but I really don't know. I don't want to I don't have an answer for you, Quinton.
No worries. St. Peter's, Seton Hall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love to see my alma mater do well. I remember when I went there, I went to a lot of the games. They won the NCAA a few years after I graduated. And when I was there, they were Big East champs, or they were in the Final Four at least. So they've had good years, bad years.
All right. Well, that takes us through the show. Nick, it's been a pleasure. I'm so happy I was able to get you on. I want to thank.
Always a pleasure, Vincent. Thank you very much for having me.
I want to thank our friend Lou Piscatelli for turning me on to your cigars and turning me on to you. So that's a big shout out.
I want to thank him as well. Thank you, Lou.
Lou's
He's
great guy.
One of my best unofficial official ambassadors that I have out there.
And if you need the best custom cabinets in the world, you can call Lou. That's all I can say. I've been to his shop. He knows what he's doing. I want to thank the sponsors. Without them, the show is always a little harder to do, both here and on Stogie Press and so forth. Thank Quinton. Quinton, don't forget, folks, keep checking Stogie Press for Quinton's Corner. You go out there. Quinton's got more stuff he's going to be putting out. He now knows how to run the site. So I'm waiting for him to screw up once or twice, but it's okay. I'll fix it. We're good. And all the followers and everybody, thank you. Without you, this show doesn't happen. So thank you for all your support. Nick, I'll give you the last word.
Well, Quinton, I'll see you next month in Charlotte. Always a pleasure. Appreciate your kind words. And for everybody, lhcigars.com is the website. If you drop me a line, there's a way to leave me a message through there. I answer them all. Love to talk to anybody who wants to talk about cigars, any questions. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LH Cigars. Hit me up. Follow.
Awesome. Well, that's the show, folks. I want to thank everybody. Next week, we're going to have RTB Cigars on. That's Ron Brown. For those that don't know Ron, tune in. If you know Ron, tune in also. We'll be bringing him on. And he's a great guy to talk to. So that's going to be our show next week. With that, this is Stogie Press out. Boston Jimmy, peace.